All right. Looks like we are live. Hey, everybody. Chuck Holton here. How's it going? Good to see you. I am coming to you from my standard balcony here in Jerusalem. I just got here about 24 hours ago, and we've got a lot to talk about. There's always a lot going on over here. Had a real interesting day today already, and we'll be talking about all of that during this live. Now, want to just ask you to do me a favor, and that is go to the chat box and put in where you're watching from. Make sure that you like and subscribe to the podcast as well here. If you're not subscribed to CBN News, you should be. And we're going to do things a little bit different today. I'm encouraging people to put questions in the comments. So if you have a question while I'm talking, and you want me to answer that question, put it over there in the chat box. And what we're going to do is our moderators are going to make a list of those questions, and in about half an hour, we're going to stop this live and start a new live over at my channel at the Hot Zone here on YouTube. And I'm going to answer all your questions over on the Hot Zone so I can get through the news here in about half an hour. And I'm going to power through it. And I'm watching your comments and questions and stuff come up over there. If there's something that's immediate that I need to answer, that's fine. I can do that. And then, again, about 12:30 Eastern time, I will go about 12:35 actually. I'll go over and start a live at the Hot Zone and answer your questions over there. So yeah, it helps if you put your questions in all caps too, for sure. All right, let's get to what's going on. The Israelis hit the Houthis again last night. Retaliation for continued missile attacks by the Houthis on Israel. As a matter of fact, we had one just about an hour ago, or not even that long. Uh, if you look at the Shofar app, this came up not that long ago, right there. And so, yeah, lots of communities in the central part, just south of Jerusalem, under missile watch. Now, again, each one of those red dots is not a missile strike or anything. That just means that they're not really sure where the missile is going to land. And so they are warning all of those communities to take shelter. Now, the missile was shot down, nobody was injured. That's normally the case with the Houthis. But the Houthis are still making a nuisance of themselves. So Israel last night struck Yemen yet again in Houthi controlled areas. They gave the people fair warning. So they put out uh, the information and said, in an hour, we're going to strike these areas, boom, boom, boom. So people need to get away from those areas. And in that way, they minimize civilian casualties. Now, show me one other organization that does that. I don't know of any. Even the United States rarely gave fair warning to the enemy about what they were going to strike. That is almost exclusively the domain of the IDF. All right. So, hello, everyone from Weirdsdale, Florida. Is that really? Oh, Weirdsdale, not Weirdsdale. And Linda's watching from Charleston, West Virginia, very close to home up there. Well, so the right before I reported on this yesterday, but I'll just recap. Right before the Israelis struck the Houthis struck a ship in the Red Sea. It was a Greek owned ship that was flagged in Liberia, had nothing to do with Israel whatsoever. They, they at first said last night that it was struck by two uh, unmanned surface vessels, two boats, like suicide boats that struck the sides. Apparently, later it was also struck by a Houthi missile, and it is expected to sink. So that's the first time that that has happened in over a year. It's the first time the Houthis have attempted to strike a vessel since April. And so this retaliation by Israel last night was partially for that and partially for the fact that they keep sending missiles this way. Now, one interesting thing about this attack that Israel did in Yemen was they blew up a ship that the Houthis had captured more than a year ago called the Galaxy Leader. And if you recall, they captured that ship, they imprisoned the crew. The crew were held for like, I think, 10 months before they were finally set free as a part of the ceasefire deal, whatever deal that was struck between President Trump and the Houthis after Operation Rough Rider. And then those sailors were let loose, but the Houthis kept the the ship and actually turned it into a radar facility that they were using to target other ships offshore. So it doesn't look like the owners of the Galaxy Leader are getting their ship back, since Israel just demolished it in port and took that asset away from the Houthis. Now, uh, so the Houthis continue to be a nuisance and continue to kind of be a clown show, really. If you watch the videos that they put out, it just makes you like roll your eyes and shake your head. And these people are absolute clowns. But they are committed, and you got to hand it to them for that. They have said they're going to continue striking Israel until Israel leaves Gaza. And so far, they are being true to their word. Now, on the note of Gaza, a story that came out today in the Jerusalem Post said that senior Hamas sources have reportedly admitted that Hamas has lost effective control over much of the Gaza Strip, at least 80% of the Gaza Strip. And that's a pretty strong acknowledgement right there. Losing control over that much of the Gaza Strip, what these senior Hamas officials are saying is, or I guess they're former senior Hamas officials, they're not current senior Hamas officials. And what they're saying is, uh, we have absolutely no control. The clans or tribes or militias that we used to have under our thumb are now controlling their little neighborhoods or barrios or areas within Gaza. It's fractured to the point where Hamas has no ability to pay its people, and virtually all of their top leadership has been killed. So they just don't have much in the way of command and control. And it appears that Hamas is losing its grip. What that means, folks, is that I think we're more likely to see some sort of ceasefire deal in the coming days. As a matter of fact, Israel Katz has said that the tide may be turning in uh, in Gaza, and he yesterday outlined what he believes is going to happen. He says he's optimistic. This is Defense Minister Katz says he's optimistic that there will be at minimum a 60-day ceasefire and in the not so distant future, and then spoke in more detail than ever before about what Israel's plans are for a post-war Gaza. And regarding the ceasefire, he said it's already basically been agreed that Hamas will return 10 living hostages and about half of the deceased hostages, which would bring the number of hostages held by Hamas down from around 50 in total to about 25 in total. And only 10 of those would be living hostages. Man, don't somebody's somebody's really upset down there. What's going on? Don't you feel sorry for those last 10 hostages? I mean, they've got to be wondering, am I ever going to be let loose? And it would be great if they could get those hostages out alive. I've kept saying that every day goes by makes it less likely that those hostages will be released alive. The remaining living hostages in Gaza are all male and they're all IDF soldiers. And the IDF, at the rate they're going, will lose more than 20 soldiers trying to get these 20 soldiers out. But if they can come up with a ceasefire with Hamas and get half of those guys out, great. I mean, let's hope they can make that happen. But here's the problem: a whole bunch. Trying to figure out. There's some guy yelling somewhere. Do you hear that? He sounds really distressed. But then again, uh, Israelis are kind of like Italians that way. They or Arabs, they just always sound angry. It just maybe it's just a kind of the language is kind of harsh or something. I don't know. Anyway, so a lot there was an open letter that was released in uh, I guess 2 days ago by a bunch of Israeli soldiers who have been wounded in the war. And this was a letter to Benjamin Netanyahu that basically said, please do not disrespect our sacrifices and the sacrifices of those soldiers who have died by accepting any kind of ceasefire peace deal that looks like a loss for Israel. We want you to take it all the way to the mat. Pursue the objectives until the objectives have been met. And that objective includes Hamas must be destroyed and defeated. If that doesn't happen, anything short of that, these IDF soldiers would consider to be a loss, and it would consider that it would cheapen the sacrifices that have been made after October 7th. Okay? Now, again, folks, uh, please go ahead and ask questions, and Connie's going to collect up those questions and put them in a document, and I'm going to answer all your questions in the second half of the hour over on my channel. Okay? We get a lot more viewers over there anyway. So, as a matter of fact, could one of the mods go over to that live right now on my channel? Because there's probably a bunch of people waiting over there already, and send them the link for this live so they can come watch what I'm talking about here, and I don't have to repeat myself as much when we go over there. This is kind of the way we've come up to do this while I'm here in Israel, and I want to be doing lives for CBN because you should dance with the one who brung you. But I also have a lot of people want me to keep doing lives over on my channel. So this is how we're trying to split that up. Okay, so more on what Israel Katz said. Katz said, as I said, is basically agreed the IDF, in exchange for the 10 living hostages, will withdraw from much of the Gazan territory, which it has taken control of since the end of the last ceasefire in March. Right now, Israel controls between 70 and 75% of all of Gaza, and they will probably give up control over much of that territory in exchange for a peace deal. And while they do that, they're going to still hold on to a pretty sizable security perimeter as large or larger than what it held after the ceasefire, which started in January. Now, so far, Hamas's stated conditions for a ceasefire are absolute non starters for Israel, as I mentioned before. They want Israel to basically allow Hamas to stay and cede control back to Hamas and leave Gaza. And obviously, if you're a Israeli soldier who lost a leg or an eye or something, was wounded fighting these guys, that would be pretty frustrating. It'd be almost as bad as watching the United States pull out of Afghanistan after 20 years and leave all of our equipment behind for the Taliban. So we spent $1 billion a week for 20 years in Afghanistan and liberated it from the Taliban, then handed it back to the Taliban, only much better equipped and better trained and more combat proven. So they don't want to do that in Gaza. Okay. Now, some of the other issues that need to be worked out is whether or not the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation will be able to continue its work in bringing aid into Gaza. As I've mentioned, that has been very successful so far. They've managed to distribute more than 62 million meals inside Gaza, paid for by the U.S. taxpayer largely at this point. But they are getting the aid directly to the people, and Hamas can't stand it because they can't intercept the aid and sell it to the people, make profit. So one of Hamas's conditions is these people, the IDF has to leave, and the GHF has to leave as well, and all the aid that comes in has to go through Hamas. Well, that's a no-brainer. Not going to do that. Forget it. But according to the defense minister, Hamas is now accepting the fact that Israel is going to hold on to the Philadelphia corridor down in the south. We don't know if they'll hold on to the other corridors, the ones in Khan Yunis, and how much of the central part of Gaza that they'll maintain control of. Hamas is still desperately trying to hold on to the ability to keep weapons and eventually, again, be a fighting force. Right now, they're not really an effective fighting force. They are simply engaging in guerrilla tactics against the IDF at this point. They have no command and control, so it's just every man for himself, more or less. Now, Katz says that part of their conditions for ending the war will be for Hamas leaders to literally relocate, to leave and go somewhere else. And he couldn't say which leaders they want to leave because they've essentially killed all the leaders that are there at this point. So there are a few, but okay. They will allow some Palestinians to move back into some of the areas that the IDF currently controls. Okay? All right, moving on. Yesterday, the IDF made a very daring raid into Syria. I don't know if you heard about this. And they detained members of an Iranian affiliated Quds Force terror cell in southern Syria that was planning an attack on the northern border of Israel, on Israelis. That's the second time in a week that the IDF has taken out Iran backed militias in southern Syria. And it shows that the Israelis are intensifying their efforts against these militias. And I don't think are getting much help from the GSS or the new Syrian government up there. But it's interesting to watch how the Israelis are just like, screw it, we're going into Syria. We're going to go take these guys out. That's it. Okay. So again, folks, if you have questions, put them in all caps and Connie will put them on a list and I'll get to them after in about 9, 10 minutes when we switch over to my channel. Okay. All right. Now, there's been another, this is another thing that's not getting a lot of coverage in the media in the US. But Prime Minister Netanyahu, as he gets ready to meet with President Trump, actually tonight for dinner, they're going to have a intimate dinner together. No reporters, no questions, and we're not sure what they're going to talk about. I think they have another more formal meeting scheduled the next morning or the next day sometime. But as that is taking place, the prime minister is sort of at odds with the IDF chief of staff, Herzi Halevi, over the balance between obtaining military objectives and getting humanitarian aid into Gaza. Now, this is striking because it's actually Netanyahu who's saying that the IDF is prioritizing aid too much. The IDF, Netanyahu says, should be focused primarily on military objectives, winning the war, and not focused quite so much on getting aid into Gaza. So that's surprising. Now, as I mentioned, the GHF is uh, effectively delivering aid for free to Gazans every day, a couple million meals a day. And there have been some reports floating around that GHF uh, was backing a plan to relocate Gazans outside of Gaza and then put in place a de radicalization program. But as it turns out, those reports are completely fabricated. Now, this is being reported by Reuters. Okay. Reuters is ostensibly, that's the place that journalists go to get their news. Man, it is so dry here. Oh, I can't drink enough. I drink like 3 of these a day. Uh, so the GHF came out and said, wait a minute, that whole story is absolutely fabricated, completely false. We have absolutely nothing to do with uh, corridors to move people from one place to another. We have absolutely no plans whatsoever to enforce a de radicalization program in Gaza. Our only focus is delivering and distributing aid to the people. That's all. As I mentioned yesterday, they must be running out of money because their initial funding, which came from the US government, was $30 million. So far, they appear to have spent about $85 million by my reckoning. And I'm not sure where the rest of that money has come from. But GHF wants to expand and actually set up more of these distribution centers. And they're expecting another $500 million or so from the US government under this big, beautiful bill. Now, I don't know how you feel about that. I don't know how I feel about that. I I have said over and over again, every single meal that you allow into Gaza is one less meal that Hamas has to provide, and it gives Hamas another lease on life. That if they stopped all aid of every kind into Gaza, this war would be over within a week or two. They would have to be. Now, the people in Gaza are not hungry. They're not starving. There are restaurants open. You can get takeout. The people are getting plenty of aid, not just from GHF, but from other UN agencies and stuff as well. It's all going into Gaza. It's very difficult to find anybody in Gaza that looks emaciated. They all look healthier than most Americans, to tell you the truth. So, I mean, they might essentially be camping and have been for 19 months or so. But that's what you get when you do something like October 7th. And so there, man, there's just some guys. I'm trying to figure, there's somebody having an argument over here somewhere. And I can't see them, but boy, I can sure hear them. They're just really having a very vociferous conversation. Uh, okay, so one last thing before I go. Got about 4 minutes left. Uh, let's see if I can find that. An Iranian spy was just arrested in Germany, who, as he was targeting the Jewish community there. German authorities apprehended an Iranian national who's accused of gathering intelligence on local Jewish institutions on behalf of a Quds Force handler from Iran. And then he was reportedly passing that intelligence on to Iran so they could plan violent attacks against Israelis outside of Israel in Germany. There's going to be more and more of this, folks, all around the world. I don't care where you live, there's going to be more and more of this happening across the globe. Now, one last thing that I'm not going to get to yet. I'm just going to start talking about it on my live when we go over there. So you're not going to want to miss this. Is the Houthis have largely stopped receiving a bunch of money and weapons from Iran. At least that's the belief. However, it appears that the Houthis are turning to organized crime to fund their attacks against Israel. We're going to talk more about that over on my channel in about five minutes or so. So again, you're going to want to go over to the hot zone with Chuck Holton here real quick. Now, please make sure you hit that like button and share this uh, podcast. And I'm going to go ahead and log off now, and you can go over and I'll meet you over at the hot zone. There's the link right there in the chat right now. You can click on that link, and I'll be over there in just a couple minutes. So we will see you over there. All right. Thank you. And we'll see you again tomorrow.